Oddball! I'm Amin Elhassan. That's Izzy Gutierrez. I'm fired up because we are in the home stretch of the season, Izzy. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to check in with a few teams that we think are contenders, and we'll let you know what we think we need to see from them in this next 6 weeks or so. Let's start in the Eastern Conference.
Let's do the New York Knicks, right? Because they have had a weekend, not a good one either. They need to beat some good teams. This weekend was a perfect example of that. Friday, they lost by 37 to the Cavs and then lost 118 to 105 to the Celtics on Sunday. Man, I mean, the Cavs are 0-5. Sorry, the Knicks are 0-5 versus the Cavs and the Celtics this season, losing by an average of 21.2 points. All right.
That's right.
This is clearly a defense that needs some work. Like, you're talking about giving up 61% shooting to the Cavs, not this last game, but the previous time that they played them. It is embarrassing what they're doing out there defensively at times. That is the one thing I need to see from this team. It's way better commitment to defense.
Oh, man, where do I begin? So first of all, they're under 500 against teams that are over 500. 0-5 against Cavs and Celtics, the best two teams in their conference. In many ways, and this is going to sound weird to a lot of people, this team is more talented and has a higher ceiling than last year's New York Knicks. I think last year's New York Knicks were a better team. I mean, just in terms of execution and ruggedness defensively, they got stops. They got stops when they wanted to, and they were able to score opportunistically. Now, obviously, you had other things. You had Julius Randle doing whatever the hell he wanted to do. You had a lot of pressure on Jalen Brunson to create if Julius Randle wasn't allowed to do whatever the hell he wanted to do. And so, yeah, that put some pressure on, and obviously that pressure ended up with injuries, and the season ended the way it did. This team doesn't have those pressures. I think Towns is a perfect fit. He's been great for them. But defensively, they just can't stop anybody, and that's despite having some really good defenders in Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. But every time you step out on the floor, Izzy, in 40% of your starting lineup, Brunson and Towns are defensive liabilities of some sort, you're going to have some issues, no?
Wasn't the calling for Knicks fans, wait till Mitchell Robinson comes back, he'll save everything, he'll be the difference maker? It just shows you what kind of a void they have there. And I would say, yeah, I think last year's were a better team. I think they were more centralized in where they were going. Like, if you're telling me Jalen Brunson's my number one option and my number two option I don't really trust, okay, I'm good going to Jalen Brunson over and over and over again. Now you got Cat, I don't think they're running stuff from Mikal Bridges very much, but you've got other options here, and you're supposed to be more versatile, but you're not. And so you're more versatile, but you're not more effective. And so if you're not defending as a result, like, you're just going to be in a shootout, and more often than not, you're going to lose, and you're certainly not going to win shootouts in the postseason.
Yeah, I to be clear, before everyone loses their the Knicks offense is really good. Their half-court offense is scoring like 120-plus points per 100 possessions. That's second best in the entire NBA behind Cleveland, right? The big question here is, how do they get stops? Because like Izzy said, you can do all that run and gun, but it's not going to work when you run up against a team that does it also and also defends. Cleveland also defends. Boston also defends. Hell, even Milwaukee this year has been reached also defense territory. Do the Knicks do that? Can they get those stops? Let me ask this question, Izzy. Does Mitchell Robinson fix all that ails them?
I mean, it depends on your five-man lineups. I don't think he solves everything. I mean, there's a report from Shams that Robinson's closing in on his season debut. I think he will help. I think he'll help with depth. I think you're probably going to have to play him alongside Karl Anthony Towns, right? You can't just have him be the fill-in for him, because then you're not really getting as much minutes from him. You're not getting as much productivity on the defensive side, because those two bigs, I mean, that would be pretty daunting to go against.
Yeah. No, like, that's pretty much the fix, right? Just play Towns at the 4, but then that might create more issues than it actually solves, because now, he's been struggling guarding 5s or playing the 5 defensively. I don't know how playing the 4 defensively.
Especially not against the Celtics.
Against the Cavs, man. What, you gonna put them on Mobley? Yikes!
Not great.
Yikes! Yeah. All right. The team that we just said is gonna basically mop up the Knicks every time, as they have this season, 3 times, 3 blowouts. The Boston Celtics. Izzy, what do we need to see from the Boston Celtics?
I mean, honestly, I don't really know if I need to see any more other than them to be together when the playoffs start because they've played a lot of games, most of this group, not necessarily Kristaps Porzingis, but most of these guys have played a lot. To me, though, this is still the favorite. Like when they've had games where they need to sort of show who they are, I feel like they've done it every single time. And whether you want to say they rely too much on 3-pointers, you can throw that argument out the window. That was the same story last year. And yeah, I think they're like I said, I think they're my favorites. I think their toughness is always going to be in question. I think you can bully them a little bit, but I don't really see teams in the Eastern Conference that are able to bully them. I don't think the Cavs are intimidating to them. Certainly not the Knicks we just talked about. So to me, it's that. I know you have a little bit of issue with their depth.
Yeah, I just think, and I've thought this for a couple of years now, even last year. Again, they proved me wrong. They won a championship, but things worked out their way in order to win that championship, which is your depth up front. You got Al Horford, who's 100,000 years old. You've got Luke Kornet, who I'm sorry, I don't care how many alley-oops Pritchard to Kornet run against the Knicks. Like, I don't think he's a rotation player for a championship caliber team in order to beat the best of the best. You're going to beat the Knicks. I don't know if you get through Cleveland playing Kornet major minutes. And then Porzingis, his health is always in question. And so that's kind of where I sit with them. When I look at, again, the Knicks, until they can figure out their defensive woes, I don't think they're a real threat. But I look at a team like the Cavs, who have bigs, right, who are going to be aggressive on the glass, and then they have enough bodies defensively to throw at your wings, right? Whether it's Hunter, whether it's Okoro, whether it's a guy like Dean Wade, they have those guys that they can throw out there to be pesky against the Celtics. And so I lean towards, if we say favorites coming out of the East, sure. Favorites to win it all, I think it's a different question when we get to the Western Conference.
One of the things also people said last year is that the Celtics path was pretty easy, right? This year, look at the potential path. I don't think it's going to be that much more difficult. However, there's a sneaky little Milwaukee team that could face in the second round. And I'm curious if that's the type of team you think could possibly maybe bully them a little bit and just kind of maybe Giannis can try to take one of those two wings out of the game and just see what happens.
This is what I'll say. I'll say that there's only one team in the East that I think is on paper is capable of beating the Celtics, absent some weird things happening, and that's Cleveland. Milwaukee, could they? Yeah, but I don't think they have the depth either. And they still haven't offensively, to me, shown that ability to really unleash hell of Dame and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I think against a team like Boston that knows how they want to play, knows how they want to do things, I think I'm going to take Boston against almost every team in the East. And I say almost because the third team that we have as contenders are the Cleveland Cavaliers. They got the best record in the East. They're jostling back and forth with Oklahoma City for the best record in the league. And I got to sit down and talk to Coach Atkinson during the break, and during the All-Star break, and I asked him, have you talked to Steve Kerr about the similarities between the 2025 Cavs and the 2015 Warriors? And he said, yes, it's not lost upon me. This is my first year here. That was Steve Kerr's first year in Golden State. The Warriors and Cavs up until that moment had been teams that are like, okay, you're a nice little playoff team. Maybe you get to the second round, but no one takes you seriously. And then all of a sudden, you got the best record in the league. Your offense is unstoppable. Your defense is top tier. There's a lot of similarities from 10 years ago with Golden State. And I think these Cleveland Cavaliers, everyone who says, oh, no, but they're not going to win because the Celtics and they're not ready yet. I think this is the team that has the ability to step up and win the conference.
Yeah, so if we're asking what do I need to see from them, just continue probably to develop that bench right now with DeAndre Hunter now and Ty Jerome. There's going to be games where they increase a lead and you're just like, man, what am I going to do now? That type of freedom really gives Donovan Mitchell a type of freedom to just do his thing, take his shots, not have to worry about the types of shots that he's taking. And if it's not his night, great. Somebody else can take over for me there. But I think that bench is going to be a really huge problem for teams in the playoffs because, again, you're talking about DeAndre Hunter, Ty Jerome. They've showed you enough. They could be a nightmare for teams. And so you're facing them against your second unit. That could be a problem.
Yeah, and I think the other thing also you have to factor in that Donovan Mitchell historically is a guy that steps up in the playoffs. All those questions.
Here and there.
What's up?
50-point games everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's all the questions that we have about like the Celtics, about their toughness, particularly Tatum, I would say. Like we don't have those questions about Donovan Mitchell. And Darius Garland, now he's a guy that struggled historically, but I think he's had a breakout year this year, and as much of a breakout year you could have as a guy who's been an all-star before. And I think that combination is going to be great. The question I have is, can those two guys defend? Right? We know Cleveland's a good defense. We know, like I said, Okoro and Hunter and Dean Wade and Mobley and Jared Allen. Those guys are all good defensive players. But in the playoffs, they pick on matchups. And when you look at that when you got a guy like Derek White, for instance, or Drew Holiday for the Boston Celtics, in, I'm going to pick on you, and either you're going to do something about it, or I'm going to play you off the floor. That's the question I have for the Cleveland
Cavs.
Cavaliers.
Feel like that one team, like the Celtics, that can win any style of game, which is why I'm very confident in that group.
Let's take a break. On the other side, we're going to talk about the Western Conference.
Are the Warriors one of them? Welcome back to Oddball. We're moving on to our Western Conference contenders. We talked a lot about the Lakers yesterday. I still kind of consider them a contender. Amin dismissed it entirely, but we'll not discuss them on this day. Today, we'll start with the Warriors. Another kind of crazy contender when you think about where they were just a few weeks ago, but they are 5-1 since the deal for Jimmy Butler. Sunday, they beat the, who was it? They beat the Mavericks in Klay Thompson's kind of sad return there. What do you think this team actually can do with Jimmy Butler? Their starting lineup is so small. And we're already talking about other teams not being able to deal with height, but we've seen Golden State deal with or have that issue before and still come out on top despite not having the size. They're currently 9th in the West, 30-27. What do you need to see from the Warriors to convince yourself that this Jimmy Butler move was enough to make them a contender?
Nothing. I've seen it all. I'm giving them contender status. No, here's the deal, man. Like, first of all, you mentioned it. They won a championship with Kevon Looney as their starting five, right? 2 years ago or 3 years ago, excuse me now, right? So they've done it before where they found it, and their other bigs were like Nemanja Bjelica and Otto Porter and Draymond Green. And they've done this piecemeal style before. I don't think they've ever done it with someone as talented as Jimmy Butler had, right? So you come in, you've got an incredible amount of toughness out of two guys that defend 5 positions and defend it well. As has been pointed out to me, like anybody could, like the old Seinfeld bit, anyone could take a reservation, but anyone can defend 5 positions. These guys defend it well. And I think, people ask, when are the fireworks going to start? Like, no, this is the best version of Jimmy Butler you ever get, right? When you first acquire him, he's scoring from somewhere else. And by the way, the added bonus of, we paid him, right? This is it. This is like where you're going to get peak Jimmy Butler, and we've seen that. It's the perfect inside-outside compliment to Steph Curry.
The offense has to be on. Otherwise, because I feel like this defense, there's going to be people, we talked about it, people they can pick on. Brandon Pajimski, if you will.
Yep.
Even Moses Moody and Steph Curry. Like Steph Curry, obviously somebody that historically has been picked on. So they're going to have to be at their very best making up for that. And that is where I think Jimmy Butler is absolutely the perfect fit, because he will be active in the passing everywhere that you don't expect him to be. He will be able to help, whether it's Steph or Brandon, and avoid that sort of dilemma.
The problem here, Izzy, is there is a toll that you pay. Right? It's when they won that championship, they were a higher seed for most of the Western Conference playoffs. Now you're coming out of probably the play-in. There's a toll you pay, right? If you've got to play against Oklahoma City or Denver in the first round, if you've got to play against, even the Houston Rockets. I'm not saying they can't beat them. I'm saying there's a toll you pay when you're saying I'm small and I got to play bigger than my opposition. And my opposition in this stage is going to be all good teams from here on out. Speaking of good teams that have size, it's the Memphis Grizzlies. They're second in this loaded Western Conference, 37-20. Izzy, one of the questions that we have is Ja Morant's availability to play, because he has missed some time. What do you think? Do you think the Grizzlies have what it takes?
I think they have the pieces. I'm just not sure. This is a very intriguing team. I was talking to some folks, and it feels like Ja Morant this year is kind of playing when he wants to, which is, it's not something I'm confirming or anything like that, but it's an odd feeling. And you look at the standings, or you look at the stats, and it's, Jaren Jackson Jr. sort of carrying this team. I don't know if they're going to have that same formula come the playoffs, right? Like, what is their winning? Is it around Ja Morant? Is it around Triple J? Like, are they a bit of an unknown? Because, you got like, everybody talks about Zach Edey and Jalen Wells as their best rookie. Nobody even knows who he is, most of the league. And so I'm not sure if they have a continuity with Ja playing every game, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like, if they go to the playoffs, if Ja Morant decides to try to take over every game, is that the formula that won them all these games in the regular season? No, it's not. So will they switch to a Ja heavy offense, or will they continue to do with what they've been doing? That is the question mark for me.
You're playing right into the hands of general manager Zach Kleiman, who's like, doubt us, doubt Memphis, doubt our city. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Does anyone hate Oklahoma City more than Memphis? Because they just basically stole your whole identity thing and did it better. Like, you can't even blame big markets when you get bounced in the playoffs now. I don't know why I took it. Let's move on. Let's talk about Oklahoma City. Hey, there you go. That's a transition.
Oklahoma City Thunder. What do you need to see from the Thunder? You love the Thunder. Seems like you would put them in the finals right now and make them the favorites. What's missing from the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Nothing. They're perfect. Let me say, they're perfect. They have everything. They defend 5 positions. They score, right? They have different options. They have the best player in the league, perhaps, in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have size, right? I guess some people might say, size is their weakness, but Chet's back, and Jalen Williams is back, and Isaiah Hartenstein's back. Sounds like they got pretty good size there as well. Their bigs are versatile. They step outside. They pass. They defend multiple positions. To me, these are your championship favorites out of anybody in the league.
So you think they've learned enough from last year's loss in the playoffs and adjusted enough to this is championship. It's not like the Boston Celtics. They had been with their core, tried over and over. It took them a few runs. You're saying this is the run for the Thunder, no doubt.
Yeah. What do you tell a kid who gets straight A's? How do you tell him to get better? I don't know, man. Like, I could nitpick and say, I want to make sure that Chet's 100%. I want to see Isaiah and Chet play more minutes together. I could do that, but I think this team has it. You question the playoff experience. I'm usually team experience over like talent or whatever, but they got the experience. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has had it as a sidekick earlier in his career alongside Chris Paul, and now last year as the guy, the target of the scouting.
I have more
report.
follow-up questions for you. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is he the type of overwhelming talent that it doesn't matter if you dedicate more defensive doubles to him and make sure to let other people beat him? Is he that good where that's not going to matter? Or has this team just made enough adjustments or knows how to play around him enough and done that enough in this regular season where, let's say other teams are trying to take Shai out of the game and they've learned how to play in that scenario?
Yeah, no, Coach Dagnall has talked about that, about them doing stuff because they try to take Shai out of the game and running different things and running him off ball, letting Jalen Williams initiate offense, right? And as a result, people have grown from this. And to me, if I'm playing the Thunder, I don't want to double and triple Shai. I think that brings way more problems because, again, they've got so many good players in terms of Chet and Jalen Williams as their primary offensive options. But even as a guy like Hartenstein, someone who can create for other guys, you throw to him in the high post, and now they're cutting off of him. Like, if you devote too much energy and attention at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think you're playing into the Thunder's hands.
What if he wins MVP? Good thing or a bad thing for the teams that for his team, because it could be motivation to try to knock him out. I'm of the theory if he doesn't win MVP, that's the better option for them. That'll motivate him throughout the playoffs, and then he'll hold up that Finals MVP and say, "Hey, should have had the regular season one too."
This is the Hakeem Olajuwon theory, right? Like,
there you go.
Like David Robinson getting presented the trophy. I think I'll agree with you only if they present the trophy to the other guy right before they play, right? David Robinson got the trophy, and Hakeem Olajuwon, in the words of Kenny Smith, looked at him and said, "That's my trophy." And then we got that game one explosion, right? So if that happens, if Jokic wins MVP, and then we got Thunder versus Nuggets in the conference finals, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's eyes narrow and say, "That's my trophy," then I think it'll
I
motivate.
still think we need a little bit more of a buffer between the What a Pro Wants commercial and those two back on top of the NBA world, because I'm just not ready. That's just too close.
Oh, how about the Peyton Watson one with Nikola Jokic by the pool? Look, where Jokic comes in riding like a Shetland pony. No.
Not nearly as annoying.
Well, okay, because they didn't run it as many times. But let's talk about the Nuggets while we're here. The Nuggets, I feel like we all consistently say, look, Jokic, you give me Jokic, I'll give you someone who's got a strong chance to win a championship. What do you need to see, Izzy, for the Nuggets to win a title?
I mean, it's a little bit of a New York Knicks situation. Is I need to see this team regularly beat good teams, because they just haven't been. And it doesn't feel like Nikola Jokic is obviously not the problem. It's I don't know if it's just in uneven nights from a Jamal Murray or an MPJ, maybe being in the playoffs will sort of refocus them a little bit, but they just haven't seemed like their normal selves. Like Jokic hasn't been able to sort of dominate and just the game in every single way possible. I'm curious to see what they're going to look like with Russ in the playoffs. Is he going to be more aggressive? Is that going to be a good thing for this group? I just don't know. I think this is this team that might have to figure themselves out, like the fine tuning in the playoffs. And then, you'll see if they can figure that out from there, because right now it doesn't feel like this team. It's not the same team from 2 years ago. It doesn't have that turn it on, turn it ability. And I mean, like, that's going to be the test, right? When we get to the playoffs.
There's erosion, right? There's been roster erosion since they won the championship. There's more on Jokic. And again, like guys that they expected would grow and like fill those voids, like Michael Porter Jr., like he's kind of been stagnant. Is Michael Porter Jr. any better today than he was when they won the championship?
Feels like the same player.
Feels like the same player. Aaron Gordon, same thing, although we didn't expect great growth from him. Jamal Murray feels like the same thing. Another slow start to the season. He's rounding into form now. But again, like all these guys are basically being the same people they were. And the only improvement we've seen is from Jokic, really. And so that's the part where it's like, is that too much to ask? Now, to win a championship, maybe. To get deep into the playoffs, I think they've got enough to get to the conference finals as is. But again,
it does seem like so much pressure on Jokic, by the way, who, if you don't include half-court heaves or full-court heaves, he would still be leading the league in three-point percentage.
Yeah.
Because he's that good.
He's like, of all the people 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they won a championship, said, who here is going to improve the most? Like, I think we were all like, oh, Michael Porter Jr., oh, I like Christian Brown, oh, Peyton Watson. They're like, and it's like, nope, it's the best player. The best player, the MVP.
He's still going to keep getting better.
Jesus, man.
All right, let's go to our sort of newish contenders, the Houston Rockets. We've talked about them a lot, and the main issue that I've had with them is, it's because they're good, is they don't have a closer, somebody you can rely on late in games. I talked to Amin Thompson about this in the All-Star break. Here's what he said.
Can you bust a myth for me? The Houston Rockets don't have an established closer.
Established closer? I feel like we have multiple. And, Alpi, Fred, Jalen, DB, I mean, even me, So just, we got so many options to close the game. I feel like that's where it gets tricky, but also it's a good problem to have.
Is that a good problem to have in the playoffs in particular?
No, it's not. You need to know where the bread is buttered. Like it's an identity crisis. I'm not saying they have identity crisis, but that's what happens when you have guys. I think sometimes people take that question as, oh, you got guys who are scared of the moment. And I don't think Houston has guys who are scared of the moment. I think they don't have a clear hierarchy of games on the line, the ball's in his hand, or it's going to him.
The guy who's been missing lately, who's sort of been a problem for them, is Fred VanVleet. And I'm not saying he is the closer. He will not be the scorer, but he will orchestrate things. He will put people in the right positions. He will get the ball to Sengun in a good spot and then, trust that offense. So I'm not too concerned about that. And if that is a problem this season, because nobody's picking them to win a championship, KD might be on their team next year, Kevin Durant, which is what Frank Isola said to us recently. But that it's seemingly like a real possibility. So they're a contender in the way that you could see like the Pacers making us conference finals last year. They could make that sort of run where you're just like, hey, wow, this team could be good if they get that one finishing piece.
Yeah, I look at them and I'm like, you asked about the Thunder. Have they had enough experience? Like the Rockets haven't had any.
No.
Yeah, VanVleet, and Dylan Brooks a little bit, but for the most part, this is a very young team. This is the one where you get your teeth bashed in the first round, probably by a team that you think you're better than. and then you learn from it.
Maybe second.
And you learn from us. Welcome to Oddball. Goodbye from Oddball. Sunrise, sunset.